Unwinding Anxiety. New science shows how to break the cycles of worry and fear to heal your mind. Written by Dr. Judson Brewer. Sample narration by Dan Hankowitz. Chapter 2. The Birth of Anxiety. Anxiety is a strange beast. As a psychiatrist, I learned that anxiety and its close cousin, panic, are both born from fear. As a behavioral neuroscientist, I know that fear's main evolutionary function is to help us survive. In fact, fear is the oldest survival mechanism we've got. Fear teaches us to avoid dangerous situations in the future through a brain process called negative reinforcement. For example, if we step out into a busy street, turn our head, and see a car coming right at us, we instinctively jump back onto the safety of the sidewalk. That fear reaction helps us to learn quickly that streets are dangerous and to approach them with caution. Evolution made this really simple for us. So simple that we need only 3 elements in situations like this to learn: an environmental cue, a behavior, and a result. In this case, walking up to a busy street, the environmental cue, is our signal to look both ways before crossing, the behavior. We share this tool with all animals, even the sea slug, a creature with the most primitive nervous system known in science, 20,000 neurons total, as opposed to roughly 100 billion in the human brain, uses this same learning mechanism. Sometime in the last million years, humans evolved a new layer on top of our more primitive survival brain. Neuroscientists call this the prefrontal cortex, PFC. Involved in creativity and planning, the PFC helps us to think and plan for the future. The PFC predicts what will happen in the future based on our past experience. Yet critically, the PFC needs accurate information to make accurate predictions. If our information is lacking, our PFC plays out different versions of what might happen to help us choose the best path forward. It does this by running simulations based on previous events in our lives that are most similar. For example, trucks and buses are similar enough to cars that we can safely assume we should look both ways to avoid any fast-moving vehicle. Enter anxiety. Anxiety is born when our PFCs don't have enough information to accurately predict the future. We saw this with COVID-19 when it exploded onto the world stage in early 2020. As would be true of any newly discovered virus or pathogen, scientists raced to study the characteristics of COVID-19 in order to find out precisely how contagious and deadly it was so that we could act appropriately. Yet, especially in the early days of discovery, uncertainty abounded. Without accurate information, our brains found it easy to spin stories of fear and dread based on the latest reports we had heard or read. And because of the way our brains are wired, the more shocking the news, increasing our sense of danger and feelings of fear, the more likely our brains are to remember it. Now add elements of fear and uncertainty, the illness or death of family members, the prospect of losing your job, hard decisions about whether or not to send your kids to school, concerns about how to safely reopen the economy, and so on, and you get a big heap of badness for your brain to try to sort through. Notice how fear itself doesn't equal anxiety. Fear is an adaptive learning mechanism that helps us survive. Anxiety, on the other hand, is maladaptive. Our thinking and planning brain spins out of control when it doesn't have enough information. You can get a sense of this simply by looking at how quickly a fear response happens. If you step into a busy street and a car bears down on you, you reflexively jump back onto the sidewalk. In this situation, you don't have time to think. Processing all of that information, car, speed, trajectory, etc., in your PFC takes much too long, and making a decision about what to do, should I step back or will the car swerve around me, takes even longer. We can break it down into 3 very different timescales that differentiate reflexes from learning from anxiety. 1. Immediate, milliseconds. 2. Acute, seconds to minutes. 3. Chronic, months to years. The immediate reaction happens at the survival level. We aren't learning anything in this situation, we're simply getting out of harm's way. This has to happen really quickly and instinctually. Jumping back onto the sidewalk is something that happens so quickly that you realize what just happened only after the fact.